Thanks for tuning back in. Here are Asia's news headlines. Chinese manufacturing sector sours. Indonesia tightens security for Asian African Conference in Bandung. Chinese factories slow to a one-year low. An initial reading for April's HSBC Market Purchasing Managers Index dropped to 49.2 from 49.6 in March. New orders and employment numbers dragging it below the forecast, equal to March's final reading. Although an initial pickup in February, the state of China's manufacturing sector has followed the general weakness in the overall economy. First quarter GDP growth came in at only 7%, on track to bring China its lowest annual growth in a quarter of a century. The country's central bank has made strong moves to support the economy with 2 interest rate cuts since November, and most recently a cut to banks' required reserve ratios. But many economists anticipate more easing measures soon as China tries to change from a production-based economy to one more concentrated on service to fight the slowdown. Tight security in Indonesia's Bandung on Friday ahead of a historical walk by Asian and African leaders to mark the 60th anniversary of a conference that made a developing world stand against colonialism and led to the Cold War era's non-aligned movement. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are attending the conference and held talks on the sidelines of the summit, the latest sign of a thaw in relations between the Asian competitors. Indonesia invited heads of state and government from 109 Asian and African countries, but according to a conference official, 21 leaders turned up, which commentators have said shows the group is no longer relevant. The world order has changed dramatically since nearly 30 heads of state came together in 1955 in the Indonesian town of Bandung to talk about security and economic development, away from global powers controlled in the Cold War. Together, they are considered for less than a quarter of global economic output at that time, but today they contribute to more than half of the world economy. Supporters of the politically powerful former Defense Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa rallied in his support on Thursday as he went to the Anti-Bribery Commission in Colombo to be questioned for accusations of graft. He is the brother of former Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa, which, since defeating Rajapaksa at an election in January, President Maithripala Sirisena has kicked off investigations into financial deals seized by his predecessor and members of the Rajapaksa family, some of whom held political posts. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who oversaw the defeat of the Tamil Tiger separatists to end a 26-year civil war, has been accused of having a private military, an allegation he has opposed. I was an official who worked honestly for this country. If an officer like me is being harassed, I don't think any government officer will work for this country, he said, after appearing at the commission. On Monday, Mahinda Rajapaksa declined to appear before an anti-bribery commission investigating allegations that he illegally convinced a rival to support his presidential campaign. Rajapaksa also denied allegations his family illegally hid money overseas. The government said Sri Lankan investigators have found more than $2 billion secretly transferred to accounts in Dubai by people close to Rajapaksa during his rule. Relatives of South Korean sunken ferry victims said on Wednesday the government's recovery plan was too late in coming. Earlier in the day, South Korean government said it will bring up the seawall ferry that sank a year ago, killing more than 300 people. Most of them were children, given into pressure from mourning families who have called for a more thorough investigation into the tragedy. The task, which the government hopes to commence in September, could take up to 18 months, and the cost could climb beyond $200 billion, depending on weather conditions and any technical difficulties, it said. The government's announcement to salvage the ferry in September is really very preposterous. Lee Nam-suk, father of one of those killed, said, "Raising the seawall has been a collective appeal of victims' families, some of whom say the government has disappointed them by failing to announce a salvage plan by the first anniversary of the disaster on April 16th. 9 of the victims' bodies remain missing." Honda Motor Corporation, known for its motorbikes and cars, showcased its new plane on Thursday as it hopes to venture into the business jet market. The aircraft is anticipated to cost upwards of $4.5 million. Honda said the Honda Jet promises a quieter engine, 20% better fuel economy over rival models, and operational cost of 2/3 or less. "It's our product which will carve out a new standard when it comes to compact-sized business jets," the president of Honda, Takanobu Ito, said. The president of Honda's aircraft company, Michimasu Fujino, compared the jet to its competitors. Honda Jet is outperforming other business aircraft in its class in speed, with maximum speed of 420 knots, he said. Honda Jet also outperforms others in fuel efficiency, with 17% less fuel consumption for flying 600 nautical miles, or 1,100 kilometers, he added. Honda stated the first model will take off for a world tour that heads to 13 countries. Honda's goal of making jets date back to its iconic founder, Soichiro Honda. The company says the Honda Jet will make Honda the only car producer in the world to build its own aircraft. The damage bill from the huge storm that ravaged parts of Australia's New South Wales could run into the hundreds of billions of dollars, State Premier Mike Baird said on Thursday. Strong winds and heavy rains battered Sydney and parts of the East Coast for 3 days, killing 4 people. The storm damaged homes and infrastructure and affected at least tens of thousands of people. 12 areas in the Newcastle and Hunter regions were declared natural disaster areas, media reported. The weather calmed on Thursday, but floodwaters are yet to go down in some areas, and Baird said the cleanup operation could take months. You look at it, you can't imagine how long it's going to take. I've been told it's going to take a few days before the water starts to recede, and obviously that's when the recovery will start. There are things we can do straight away, but patience is going to be a big part of the next few days and weeks. Obviously, everything will be done as quickly as possible, Baird said. The Bureau of Meteorology said another storm is anticipated off the New South Wales coast by the end of this week, and this could hinder cleanup operations and cause further damage, local media reported. A white line remains on the Hien Luong Bridge in Dong Ha, Vietnam. Once the marker between communist-controlled North and the U.S.-supported South, it is now just an arbitrary line. Groups of war veterans from the U.S. have been visiting the country to reflect on history as the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, which is underway. Louis Andre was a Special Forces first lieutenant based here and recalls drinking from these waters. Vietnam War veteran U.S. Special Force Louis Andre had this to say.
I've always thought it was a mistake that we were involved, and I've always been upset that we didn't do more to, once we withdrew, to remedy the long-lasting effects of the war.
Remains of the war are everywhere in this province. Unexploded cluster bombs, or BLUs, risk being mistaken for toys when discovered by children. Elsewhere, the group visits Agent Orange victims. Millions of gallons of toxic chemical were sprayed onto Vietnam's jungles, resulting in respiratory cancer and birth defects for thousands. Some of those who fought here stayed. David Clark was a sergeant in the U.S. Marines in Da Nang, where he now lives with his Vietnamese wife. He remembers intimidation techniques required of him in the past.
It is far more enjoyable to put smiles on the Vietnamese people's faces than what I used to do to make them fear me. Yeah.
April 30th, 1975 marks the fall of Saigon and is a commemorated holiday in Vietnam. We will be right back after this commercial break.